G'day two-wheel adventurers and welcome back to the channel. Now this right here is the new DR-Z4S from Suzuki, and this here is me in Portland, Oregon riding the new DR-Z4S. I was lucky enough to be one of a few invited by Suzuki to attend the world launch for this new bike in the United States of America. So in this video, I'm going to dive straight in, give you guys all the details around the brand new 4S model from Suzuki, the good, the bad, the ugly, absolutely everything, and we'll see how it stacks up compared to the previous model, and will I be running out to Suzuki to grab myself a brand new 4S and replace my E model sitting right here. Now the new 4S is set to replace our beloved icon DRZ400, a bike that has been basically unchanged for 25 years now. With emissions rules becoming more strict every year, it was only a matter of time before Suzuki had to do something to keep this model fresh and on offer for its cult-like following it has all around the world. Although I have heard that at least for the moment, the 400E model will be sold alongside the new 4S here in Australia. How long that lasts, I just don't know. But for any of you who aren't regulars to this channel, I own my very own DRZ400E, which I've had since new for around 5 years, and in that time I've built the bike into a more adventure orientated model, and I've ridden it all over Australia, racking up over 30,000 kilometers in that time. So I think I'm in a pretty good spot to give a review on the new DR-Z4S when comparing it to the previous model. Australia was one of the lucky countries that got the E model many years ago, so some of my comparisons will be to the E model and not the S, like some reviews that will no doubt come from other countries. The E model is a more off-road orientated version which has a larger carb, different suspension and different running gear to the S, but here in Australia the 400E is used in all applications: enduro, adventure, commuting, the do-it-all bike really. And with all the aftermarket options that are available, you can build it to suit whatever style you want. Now just quickly, in the name of transparency for all of you adventurers, Suzuki are not paying me in any way, shape or form to do this review video. It's a completely honest review and it's my thoughts only. Obviously Suzuki did pay for my flights and accommodation to go over to the USA and attend the world launch for the 4S model, which was an absolutely amazing time and I'm super appreciative of it. But this review is completely my own thoughts. I can say whatever I want about this bike. I'm not being paid to say a certain thing. So just thought I'd get that out of the way. My channel here is just to help out all of you adventurers, just like I do when I get on YouTube and do my own research as well. I want to help all of you out there know whether the new bikes coming out are any good, whether the gear's any good. Just test it all and give you guys my honest thoughts. So with that out of the way, let's continue on. So this video will have a few different parts to it. First off, I'm going to jump straight into the features and specifications of the brand new DR-Z4S. What things are new on this bike, what's changed, and how does it compare to the previous model and how it's different in that sense. And then through each section, I'll give you guys my thoughts after the 2 days of riding I did in Portland, Oregon in the United States of America. Give you guys my thoughts on each section, just making it a bit easier to break down each section and give my thoughts on each of those individually. Secondly, I'll do a bit of a review video around how the bike performs on and off road. And then lastly, I'll do a review of the bike as a whole package. How much is it? Is it good value for money? Who does the bike suit? Do I want one? And just what I think of it as a whole and whether you guys should run out and spend your hard-earned cash on the brand new DR-Z4S. Now when this bike was first announced last year and I first seen the photos, I thought that this 4S was just another minimal update from Suzuki, like I'm sure a lot of you did too. But I can assure you, the 4S is a completely new bike when compared to the previous 400 model. The overall look from afar is very, very similar, but almost every part on this bike has been adjusted, changed, or tweaked in some way to bring an all-new model to life. But let's start with one of the most important changes or features on the 4S, the engine. Now we have once again the same reliable 398cc engine that has been around for the last 25 years, although this engine has had a full overhaul. On the inside, all components have been tweaked for better, smoother performance, as well as to help Suzuki meet the new Euro 5 emissions laws. There is now a dual spark plug setup. A few people thought that the spark plug had been moved to the side of the engine, but no, the original is still on top and a second one just added to the side. There is new cam profiles, new intake and exhaust valves, new airbox inlet, a new exhaust system which has 2 catalytic converters inside to again meet the Euro 5 emissions. There's a clutch assist system which I really enjoyed, a ride-by-wire throttle body setup, and of course the most important added feature everybody wanted is of course fuel injection. No more sticky carb when you let the bike sit for a month or two. So as you can see, there is an extensive list of changes to the engine, which makes for a completely different ride. but the bulk of the changes are all related around the emissions rules and also trying to make the bike a smoother, more enjoyable riding experience. Now, while we're talking about the engine of the brand new DRZ4S, I'm going to have to address the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, the gearbox. Yes, the new 4S model is only a 5-speed, just like its predecessor right here. Now, don't tune out. I know a lot of you in the comments were unhappy about this. A lot of people around the world were unhappy about this when Suzuki announced the new 4S model only being a 5-speed. But me personally, I don't think it's a deal breaker. I don't think it really matters at all. I'm pretty happy to see that Suzuki kept some of the DNA from the DRZ that we've come to know and love over the last 25 years in the new 4S model, keeping the engine pretty similar, just tweaking and adjusting all the components to make it a smoother, more enjoyable ride. I think if Suzuki completely changed the engine of the DRZ and bring out a 500cc 6-speed engine, a lot of people would probably be unhappy with that because we'd probably lose the big service intervals that we have on the DRZ. So I'd be more than happy to see Suzuki bring out a 500cc 6-speed engine, but it just wouldn't be a DRZ. And to be fair, on the 2 days of riding, we did do some blacktop sections. We were doing some freeway speeds, and I never once found myself searching for that 6th gear, so I don't really think it's going to be an issue at all. So how do I feel about all of these changes that have been made to the 4S on the engine? How does it feel compared to the previous model? Well, personally, I think it is a massive step forward in the right direction. In the way of power, I found it pretty similar to my E model. Obviously, the E had a little bit more power than the previous S model, but this 4S felt very similar. It was a little bit hard to compare because the power delivery of the new 4S is just so much smoother than the E model. You don't really get that initial jump that you get with this model. So at first it kind of felt like it was underpowered to me, but then the more that I rode it, it felt pretty similar. It's just the way that the power comes on the new 4S feels so much more linear and smooth. It kind of puts you in a false sense that you have less power, but I really don't think you do. When you're cruising on those highway speeds in 5th gear, it still had plenty left to give. So I was sitting on around 70 miles an hour on those freeway sections. That translates roughly to around about 110 kilometers an hour, which is our fastest speed legally we can do on the road here in Australia. So the bike's geared really well to the way of adventure riding here in Australia, straight out of the box. When it comes to the slow speed sections, the single track, tight technical sort of stuff, the new 4S performs way better once again than the previous model. As I said, the way the power comes on is so much smoother. It just helps you out in those slow sections to not be lurching forward and back as you get on these previous models. If you're down in 1st gear, even 2nd gear, a little tiny tap of the throttle and you'll be jumping forward and back. But I found it much easier to keep a constant speed, keep the throttle nice and steady on this brand new model. It really helped out in those slow sections. And one other thing, the clutch assist system is really, really good. Really helps with those gear changes. It's a super light clutch feel on the bike. It really helps on those downshifts as well, preventing the slip on the rear tire. And then lastly, as I said, the engine is so super smooth. I found it on those long blacktop sections that because the engine is so smooth, you got a little bit less vibration than you got on these previous models. Yes, it's a single cylinder engine. You're going to get some vibration no matter what, but with how smooth the engine is, it just made it feel way more comfortable out on the street. Let's get into the suspension on the new 4S. Now, the bike does have a completely new frame design to help optimize its handling and maneuverability, but the suspension is really what makes this bike handle so well, in my opinion. It comes with new long travel suspension, KYB inverted forks up front, and KYB rear suspension as well, all fully adjustable. The previous model suspension was always way too soft, especially the front forks, but I can happily say that the suspension on the 4S is far better. So over the 2 days of riding on the new 4S, I aired out the bike a bunch of times just on some erosion mounds or whatever little playground things I could find, but the front fork really impressed me. It was really good on the rebound, came back to its original position really quickly, I found, and it's way more firm than the previous models. The previous models were always known to be way too soft under the suspension, so to see the new 4S front fork perform that good, I was super happy. It was really good on those corrugations, short sharp bumps as well. It soaked those up really well. I didn't adjust the front fork at all throughout the 2 days, so from stock it was really good for me, and with the bike in stock form I don't think I'd have to change the front forks at all. So when it comes to the rear shock, I think I could have done with a little bit of an adjustment on the preload. I'm around about 100 kilograms with all of my riding gear on, so I think a slight adjustment on the preload would have helped me out a lot. It didn't really slow me down. It still performed pretty good along most conditions. The only times that I noticed it was if I aired the bike out and landed hard on the rear, it would sink pretty low, and if I was going through a whooped out section pretty fast, it would get a bit swirly, bounce around a little bit. So I think a little bit of added preload on the rear shock would have helped me out a little bit, but overall the suspension is a great package out of the box. In stock form, I don't think you'd really have to upgrade any of the springs, maybe just some of the adjustments, as I said, on the preload to get your weight right, unless you're a really heavy rider. The only real issue that I see down the track is if you want to load your bike up to be more of an adventure bike, you're probably going to have to look at a different shock to help carry all that extra weight on the rear. But other than that, great package with the KYB suspension on the new DR-Z4S. It's way further ahead in performance than the previous models, that's for sure. Now just a quick one here, but the brakes were upgraded on the new DR-Z4S as well. We've got 20mm larger brake discs on the front and the rear, 270mm front disc and a 240mm rear disc. Now I found the braking performance to be really good, much more responsive than the E-model brakes, and you add that in with the better suspension. They work both hand in hand with the suspension, preventing that front end diving when you get really hard on those brakes. So let's talk about the tech that's been added to the brand new DR-Z4S. It's a bunch of things that bikes like this just did not have, but it's a major reason why the 400E here in Australia has been really popular for the last 20-25 years. You don't want to be stuck in the outback with an electrical issue that you cannot fix, so these bikes here are just bare bones, and that's why everyone's absolutely loved them. You can generally fix them and get yourself out of trouble, but let me tell you that the added tech on the 4S, I think most people are really going to like it. I certainly did, and I think the ride mode features are really going to be good for beginner riders getting out and wanting to ride the dirt for the first time. But even on the other side of things, I think more experienced riders are going to enjoy all these ride modes just as much as the beginners. I found it pretty fun to just toggle through all those different modes in different sections of track, different conditions, and just really feel the difference of how the bike performed. Now obviously you've got the brand new headlight and indicators, which are great. They look modern, and that headlight actually does a really great job. We tested it on the first night of the event indoors, and it took me a few moments to get my eyesight back. But the more important tech add-ons are the LCD display and its switches, which unlock the setup of all of the new ride modes, traction control modes, and ABS settings. The LCD display I found to be great. It gives you all the information you want and need, and nothing more. Plus I found it really simple to use with the toggle switches on the handlebars. I've ridden a lot of bikes that you need a degree to figure out how to turn the ABS off or toggle ride modes, but it really is simple on the 4S. And how handy is it to have a fuel gauge on this bike? Such a simple thing, but something that I really appreciate. Now when you turn the bike on, as all new bikes, the ABS will be on, but to turn it off, you just hold the ABS button for around 2 to 3 seconds, and you'll get the rear off only first, plus a little orange indicator light to say that it's off. Then to completely turn it off, you just repeat the process, hold the button again, and you'll get ABS completely off. To bring it back on, you can hold the button again, or just turn the ignition off and on. It's best to turn all of this off as soon as you hit the dirt, so you don't get caught out. As for the ride modes and traction control settings, it's all pretty simple once you use them a few times, but you have 3 ride modes to pick from: A, B, and C. A being the most aggressive and sharpest response, B being a more linear approach, and C being the gentlest of the lot, which I found really nice in the tight, twisty, technical riding, just to dull the power down a touch and make everything smoother. I did try all 3 modes throughout the 2 days, but after a while I found myself in A mode for the bulk of the time. I just wanted that fast, snappy feel, although I think the other modes will be good for beginners who want to dull the power down, or as I said, in slow, technical riding, or even slippery conditions where you want to limit wheel spin, so as a rain mode or something similar. But you definitely can feel the difference between these ride modes, whereas some other bikes you can't really tell the difference. Going from A to C or vice versa, you definitely notice the change straight away. Now linking the ride modes up with traction control modes, you can really make the bike feel completely different. Traction control has 4 different settings. Firstly, TC1 and TC2. These are your on-road settings. TC2 being the more invasive of the two, so maybe chuck that one on in rainy, wet weather. The other 2 settings are G mode, which stands for gravel mode, and the last one is, of course, off, and you can go it alone. Now I tried out all of these settings throughout the 2 days of riding. I tried all different combinations just to get a feel for how all of them work together and how it changes the feel of the bike. But let's concentrate on G mode for a second, or gravel mode. But basically gravel mode has been designed to limit the wheel slip when off-road, as the name suggests, gravel mode. When I first heard about gravel mode, I honestly thought it was a bit of a gimmick. Usually you get these rider aid modes for off-road and they don't really help at all. They just hinder your riding, but I was pleasantly surprised with gravel mode. The first time I really tried it was on some open gravel sections. I'd come out of the corner, try and light the rear wheel up and get some spin happening, but it wouldn't really let me do it. The bike would just change the rear wheel speed, grip up better, and I'd be flying out of the corner and not spinning my rear wheel everywhere. So it was a bit of a weird sensation to use it first up. But then along the ride on day 2, I think it was, we came to a little hill climb section and we got to do it twice. So first time I went up, no traction control aids at all, and then did it again with the gravel mode on. And the second time round, I was amazed with how much more grip I actually had and how much less the rear wheel spun on the way up this gravelly, slippery section.
Holy crap. Okay, we're just on a little hill climb section, playing around here. Gonna go back and do it again, but that was with traction control mode off. Oh wow. Okay, that's actually night and day. Wow. Maybe I'll go again and do without gravel mode, but that just felt so much better. That was easy. As soon as I launched off that little mound at the bottom and landed last time, my rear wheel just spun.
I think gravel mode's a winner. I really liked using it on things like that. I didn't use it the whole time, but when I had sections like that and I just wanted to cruise and have more grip and just put in less effort, I chucked it on. But I really think it'll be great for beginner riders who want to get off-road for the first time and get into the dirt and have some fun with a little bit less risk. Overall, I found the ride modes and traction control settings to be really good. I like that you can really tell the difference between what mode you are in, and G mode was really cool to have. My only real complaint is having to hold the button to turn off ABS settings, but unfortunately, that's on all modern bikes now, so there's not really a way around that one. So one other thing to mention here in this section that Suzuki have added to the new 4S model, it doesn't have a specific name, but it's to do if you crash or have a slow tip over on the bike and you stall the engine, the bike will register that, and if you pick the bike up and try to fire it up again straight away, the bike won't let you, it won't do anything. You have to turn the ignition off, wait 10 seconds, turn the ignition back on, and you'll be able to fire the bike back up. Now, it's something that's in a lot of other bikes, but it's not something that I've really dealt with on any of the bikes that I've owned or ridden, so I thought I'd mention this one in here. I didn't think I would test this feature out on this ride, but in the way of science, I ran out of talent, and yes, I tested this feature out. We were doing some photo shoot runs up and back on this muddy section. They warned us about these muddy ruts, but I did not pay attention, went in too hot, dropped the bike off to the side, went to pick it up and start it again to try and get out of there before anyone noticed that I dropped the bike, but obviously picked it up and it didn't let me start the bike at all, so I had to flick the ignition off, wait 10 seconds, and then it fired back up for me. But in that time, someone had caught up behind me and everyone knew that I'd crashed the bike, so did not get away with that one, but I thought I'd mention that feature in there. As I said, it's in a lot of other bikes, but I haven't seen it personally, but it's due to the start system on the new 4S. It's a single press start button, so Suzuki doesn't want you to bump that button when you're picking the bike up after a crash and start the bike up on its side. Obviously that wouldn't be good with all the oil in the wrong place, so you pick the bike up, wait the 10 seconds, oil should be back where it should be, ABS can recalibrate itself, and then you're good to go. So I thought I'd mention that one there. Don't think it'll be a big issue for most people with the riding that most people will use the 4S for. If you're going to use it for a lot of enduro riding and you're dropping the bike a lot, then maybe it will be a bit annoying, but I think for most people it's not really going to be an issue. Now, the fuel tank on the 4S is an 8.7 litre capacity, down from 10 litres on the previous models. Now, Suzuki claim a range of 250 kilometres from this. Obviously, this would be in ideal situations, so hopefully I can put this to the test when I get my hands on one of these here in Australia. I'm not quite sure how far we travelled on our day's riding over in the US, as it was all in miles, but we did have 1 bar of fuel left by the end of the day. But with all the engine upgrades and a smoother ride, I'm sure the fuel efficiency is far better. How much better is yet to be determined. Here in Australia specifically, I don't think the stock fuel tank on the 4S is going to be quite large enough for a lot of people. If people want to use it as a dual sport where they leave home, go to the trails, come back home, I think they're going to have to factor in a fuel stop along the way, but some places, some people just do not have that luxury and there will not be a fuel stop on their route. So in the meantime, I think a fuel bladder will probably be necessary, but I think once the aftermarket reaches the 4S, there'll be plenty of other options like a safari tank, like what you can see on my E model right there. I'm hoping to see something around the 12, 13 litre mark for the new 4S. Over here in Australia, we've obviously got the safari tanks. The one I have on there is a 17 litre, but I'd like to see something a little bit smaller option, not have to have a big chunky tank on the front. So hopefully companies like Safari and some other brands get around that, because the tank that's on the 4S is really slimline and it's great to sit up on front on top of that tank when you're riding some of the harder trails. So it'd be nice to try and keep that for when you upgrade to a slightly larger tank. Now, another important factor that got a lot of people upset when the new 4S was announced by Suzuki is, of course, its weight, 151 kilograms wet. Now, people just need to understand that the 4S, it is a dual sport. It's not an enduro bike. If you want a bike that's 110 kilograms, 120 kilograms, you're going to be getting an enduro bike, and it's not going to be as comfortable as the 4S is on the street, and you're not going to have those long service intervals that you get with the 4S. So people just need to realize that, and also understand where all this added weight is coming from. Most of it's to do with all the emissions to pass Euro 5. You go into the exhaust of the new 4S, there's 2 catalytic converters in there to pass the emissions rules. That obviously adds a lot of weight right there. And then if you factor in all the electronics, all the cabling, the ABS systems, all of that sort of stuff, that adds weight as well. It adds up quickly. But if you look real closely at the 4S, you'll see that Suzuki has tried to limit the increase of weight with changing other things on the bike, making all the new frame, subframe, all of that out of lighter materials. Even just looking down to the rear swing arm, you'll see a bit of a chamfered edge on the swing arm compared to the box section that comes on the E model. So they've tried to shave any weight down in other areas where they can to try and minimize the increase in total weight. So is the new DR-Z4S heavy? Well, no, not in my opinion. If someone told me before I rode the 4S that it weighs exactly the same as the previous model, I would have believed them. I couldn't feel any extra weight. If anything, with its smoother power and the steering feeling lighter to me, it felt light and nimble in the single track, so the weight, although being heavier, it was not noticeable at all for me. The 4S rider triangle is slightly different to its predecessors. Minor adjustments in the foot pegs, handlebars, and the seat placement makes it technically different, but it does feel very similar to the previous model. The major difference I noticed straight away is the seat. It is 100 times more comfortable than the previous model. It's softer and a little bit wider as well. I really don't think I would need to upgrade it at all, but we will test that one out more in the future. The overall comfort of the 4S is great, not just for your butt, but just the way the bike rides. On day one, we did a good chunk of on-road riding, and on the 4S, it was not a bother at all. It truly is a dual sport, as the name suggests. It handled the twisty on-road sections great, and with the smooth power delivery, it just all felt right. I feel like I could do a really long road ride on the 4S and have an absolutely great time, or even use this bike as a bit of a commuter. I think it would be a really great, comfortable option. Now let's talk the all-important price. That's one of the biggest factors people take into consideration when buying a new bike. How much is the new DR-Z4S here in Australia? Now, I haven't been given a confirmed price from Suzuki just yet, but if you look at the American price and convert that over, us in Australia here are going to be looking at something around $14,000. When you compare it to the E model here, which I think last time I checked is around $10,500 right away at the moment. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's around rough figures. So we're just going to have to wait and see if people are willing to spend another $3,500–4,000 $4,000 on the new 4S model for an upgraded package, that's for sure. Better suspension, a more modern look, the modern tech. So whether people will pay that extra money, I'm not quite sure yet. We'll wait and see. Now the 4S sits in its own little category, I think. It's not a full adventure bike and it's definitely not a full enduro bike. It sort of sits in the middle on its own really. There's not really any other direct competitors with the new 4S. You got things like the CRF 450 RL, maybe the WR 250R, which are similar, but I still don't think they compare. The 250 is obviously a smaller engine and the CRF 450 RL doesn't have those long service intervals. So I think Suzuki have that luxury there with the 4S being on its own. Its closest competitor here in Australia at the moment is obviously this right here, the 400e model, if they're going to continue selling that next to the 4S. But we'll wait and see how long that lasts. Now, although I think the 4S has its own little category, doesn't have any direct competitors, I don't think that means Suzuki can just charge whatever they want for this bike. I think they're going to have to look closely on the price. I don't want to see it creep up any more than 14 grand really in Australia. Otherwise, they're just going to push people towards a proper adventure bike that has absolutely every feature on it. I think they need to leave a little bit of wriggle room in there for people to kit out this bike with any aftermarket options that are going to come up down the track, like a bigger fuel tank, a rear rack, just things like that that people are going to want to chuck on their bike straight away. But personally, I really do think the extra money spent on the 4S versus the old E model is well worth it. You're going to get a better suspension setup straight out of the box, all of the modern tech and those ride modes that I found to be really, really good, and just an overall modern look of the bike. So I think with the price point of around 14 grand, I think that's reasonable. I'd be happy to go and spend that to get those added extra features over the E model. Now, with all the specs and features out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty. How did the bike perform? And I'll start with the on-road performance. Now, being a dual sport, or basically a dirt bike, I didn't really have high expectations for the 4S on road, but I was really surprised and impressed with how good this bike is on the street. The smooth power, the easy gear changes, the comfort from the seat and the suspension, it really did handle like a dream on road. Usually it's a compromise for bikes like this. If you want good handling on road, you won't get it off road, or vice versa. But it's just not the case with the 4S. I could tip it into the corners, it would hold its line, stand up really easy with the smooth power. It really was great fun to ride on the road. Now, as for off-road performance, do I really need to say anything else? It's a DRZ after all. But this bike really performed well off-road. I'm not quite sure what changes were made, but the steering felt really light to me and the bike felt nimble. With the fuel injection and engine upgrades, the bike was so smooth in the low rev range on single track. It was easy to keep a constant speed, pick the line I wanted, and just get the job done with minimal fuss. It had enough power to get out of trouble, but not too much to cause any issues. As I said, the gravel mode was a welcome addition, and I really enjoyed noticing the difference it made. Then you go and add in the suspension, and the bike was just made to be a great general purpose trail bike or dual sport. There aren't really many negatives that I could come up with for its overall performance. The tyres were a little bit lacking, but that's not really a bike issue. It's an easy change. I'd want to adjust the rear suspension for my weight, and I really think this bike would be dialed in for the perfect trail bike, dual sport bike. So a few quick things that I really do like on the bike, and a few things that I don't quite like as much. Things that I like, I love the modern styling of the bike. It looks absolutely amazing in person. It really brings this bike into modern times. I love the smoother power that the engine delivers. It makes for an absolutely comfortable, smooth ride. And I also love the comfort and handling of this bike. You can really ride this thing all day, super comfortable, and it makes it an absolute joy. A few things that I'm not absolutely thrilled about, but they're not deal breakers at all, but that's the small fuel tank. I wish it was slightly larger for here in Australia specifically. I didn't really like that drop safety feature. I know it's probably got to be in there anyway, but I didn't really like it. If you're going to be riding hard off-road and drop the bike a few times a day, it's probably going to get old, but it is what it is. You just deal with it. And then lastly is the ABS switch. I don't really like having to turn that off. I'm used to not having it on my previous DR-Z400E, but modern bikes, they all have to have this, so unfortunately, we'll just have to deal with that one. So here we are, the all-important question that all of you want to know from me. Do I want to get rid of my trusty 400e model and go and get myself a brand new DR-Z4S? And it's a really, really simple answer for me, guys, and that answer is 100% yes. The 4S outperforms the old 400e in every single way straight out of the box. The suspension setup's better, it's a smoother ride, the power delivery is so much better, all that modern tech that's added in with all those ride features, it's just more comfortable. It just outperforms the 400e in every single way. Whether or not everyone wants to part with a little bit extra money to get the 4S and get those added features, only time will tell. But it's really cool to see that the new 4S has some of the DNA built into it that the old DRZ had. The engine isn't too much different, it's just been tweaked, adjusted. So I really think the DR-Z4S is going to be a winner, and I'm going to have to start making room in my garage because I want to get one in there any way I can. So that wraps up what is pretty much my initial thoughts, initial review of the Suzuki DR-Z4S, guys. I had an amazing time over in Portland, Oregon in the United States of America. Massive thanks to Suzuki for inviting me over for the world launch. I had an absolutely amazing time. Cool bunch of people we were riding with there, and the scenery and the tracks were absolutely amazing. Completely different to anything that I've experienced here in Australia, of course. So thanks so much for watching. I really hope you got a lot out of this one, and I hope that my views coming from the previous model bike helps you guys out with knowing that this 4S is a good thing. Now before you go, make sure you subscribe to the channel. You want to see some more DR-Z4S content. Suzuki Australia are trying to line up one of their bikes for me when they get into the country. Can do some more testing here in Australia in our home country conditions and really put that bike to the test with more than just 2 days of riding. But initial impressions of the bike, really like it. Can't wait to get on one here in Australia and test it even more. So as always, a massive thank you to all of you for tuning in to these videos. The channel wouldn't be where it is if you guys didn't tune in every single week to watch all these videos, whether you like, comment, subscribe, or even just watch it. I appreciate all the support. Make sure you stick around for the next few weeks. I'm going to do a whole video on the world launch. I try to video everything, so I'll do one of my normal adventure ride trip videos for the Suzuki world launch. Show all of you what sort of goes on behind the scenes and what the whole trip entailed for me and everyone else on the ride. It was really fun experience, and I really think you guys will appreciate seeing all that content. So stick around. Hope you enjoy all of that. Make sure you ride safe out on your own two-wheel adventures. See you soon.